You scoot back and I'll scoot forward. Are we starting? Did we already start? Good morning. My name is Brian Zitzo.
I'm Josh McKinney, and I go in Monday for a consultation for a small hernia.
Oh, fun. Very fun.
So we're going to do, it is going to be fun. So we're going to do a quick demo of this project that we want to start working on. This is a side project of mine that I put together really quick during a last boot camp that I was helping out with. It was really messy, and I'm just starting to clean it up. And so Brian's going to help me do that, especially with the testing part. And here's the quick demo of how that looks. I didn't actually have this up the way that I wanted to.
There
we go. There we go.
This is going to be fun.
A little bit better, a little bit better. Okay, so this is an experiment dealing with the accelerometer and especially Firebase. So if you take a look here at the group migration, what it's currently called, and I move my mouse, sorry, not my mouse, my phone, the accelerometer is sending data in real time to Firebase, and the website is pulling that data down and affecting the skew of that div. And you can view the database right here. You can see how fast that's coming in, and then there's a real-time socket to that from here as well, listening to it. So that's the general idea. I do have it working with multiple people connecting at the same time. Oh, you have two on there?
I have two on mine.
I'm going to refresh mine because it's not.
It's on the autofocus though.
Cool. All right. So, and then a quick walkthrough of the code. So you can see that we've got the authorization. That's the first thing I've modularized. Before it was just a really quick exploration, throw everything on one script. And I've started to modularize. I've got the Google Firebase where it will redirect you to a page to log in, and then as soon as you log in, it redirects you back. And I'm also quickly getting the user's photo to put in the database.
I did notice that. Yeah.
And then I've got the DB listener, DB writer, and add phones to page, just kind of all mangled together. I identified potentially one of the next things is to just nicely abstract the DB calls away from the DOM manipulation, no side effects going on there in those, and have the database do things like get phones and write phone and stuff like that.
Well, hold on. You said this is all mangled together, but it looks like you've got different functions for each behavior here. So add phones to page is one function, correct?
It is, but see how it's getting stuff from the database, grabbing those values, looping through. Yeah. And then it's initiating another listen for the rest of the manipulations.
So do you have a vision for how this function should look? How it should look different when we're done?
Yeah, just a little bit. So I would like to get a really clean get initial phones. I'd like to have a write phone data type of function, or set phone gamma. And those would just be dealing with data. So we would be sending data to Firebase, getting data back, and then passing that data to another function that would do the actual DOM manipulation.
Okay. Wonderful. And our goal today is to get some tests wrapped around this. Is that correct?
It is, and I don't know if that's going to mean, and it seems like to me that in order to do that well, we're going to have to first abstract a little bit out, but we can determine that here as we go.
Sure. Shall we jump in?
Yeah, I think it's a good time to take a quick break for our sponsor. Our sponsor today is PickleCat. I don't know if you've heard of PickleCat. We're going to allow
I love pickle cats.
And
they're so delicious.
Sit with us for a little bit. We're going to listen to the soundtrack and see if we can glean anything from PickleCat. Oh, the sound's not going. And yet, we're still transfixed. Where is the sound?
Is the monitor muted?
No. It did it last time. It sounds pretty good too. It was the first time I'd heard it on PickleCat. Anyway, we're thankful. On our very first episode, PickleCat was really gracious and is taking care of all the hosting. That they've contacted YouTube about the video and said, hey, it's on us. So
if they send you some product, can you get the spicy kind for me?
Yeah,
thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Obviously, that's what the cat has as well. All right, so Brian, I don't know if you've had a chance to quickly look at the code. There's not much there. Like I said, all I've abstracted is that initial authentication, which is also Firebase. So this is where Firebase wraps up a bunch of stuff, and we could abstract little by little what they provide. It seems natural that the auth and the database might be a little bit separate.
Sure. This is pretty much the first time I've really looked at the code in depth. So let's just dig into it. I like that you have different functions defined, and it's not just one long procedural function. So
Yes.
we can definitely work with this. It looks like on line 4, it's all inside add event listener.
Yeah, and I believe this is due to the fact of how we're including Firebase. Firebase takes a while to initiate and recommended this approach.
Okay.
So it may be good just to keep that for now and then test later if it works without it.
Sure. Do we have a testing framework installed?
We do not. Well, actually, good question. I think I started to get Jest configured. So we have we have Jest installed.
Okay. So in the package.json, which is a npm configuration file for Node.js.
And as you can see, there's no build test runner at the moment. I think where I left off with that was my Webpack build currently is grabbing all of the JavaScript and bundling it.
Okay.
And it would, if I did the standard Jest file name .test.js, it would also be grabbing those unless I change my Webpack config to ignore those. And I learned through some other resources and at work that a good way to abstract those is to have __tests __, and then set your Webpack config to ignore all those.
Okay.
So that's a possibility.
Well, disclaimer, this is going to be fun. I've never set up Jest, and I've only read some Jest and code reviews. I haven't used it, but I imagine it's similar to any other test framework with the exception of the snapshot testing. So let's jump in. Where do we start to get the simplest use case? Can we write a test that just says assert true is true, and that way we can validate that our test framework is configured?
I like it. And right now we have no subfolders, so we can just make a subfolder right inside source.
Perfect.
We can put our first test in there that is something like...
we can call it PickleCat.
That's true.
If we want to.
I mean,
at this point in the process, things are going to change rapidly. So,
and it's good to shout out. It's always good to name drop our sponsors.
Absolutely. We love PickleCat, and thank you again for sponsoring our show. Okay, so we've got picklecat.js.
And what's the first thing a test file needs in it? We import Jest somehow? I believe so. I am also going to use Jest, so maybe a little bit quickly. Sounds like a good idea. That's the first test. So we can get an example. Obviously not Jest on my own instead. See what's provides. Might have to use that. I like that. I like full JavaScript testing. That's what I did. Yeah, that's fine. So actually with the Jest, it doesn't appear that we need to include Jest at all.
Okay, so it looks like it's going to find our files and read them for us. Okay, so that means that the Jest setup is not explicit, which is nice. The pro for this is that there's not a lot to write. You just jump right into your test. The con, which The con to this is that if you're not familiar with Jest and you open this test file, you may not know this is a Jest test file. I tend to like the explicitness, but that's okay. We can work with whatever.
I'm gonna be even more vague.
Oh, truthy.
To be truthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for those that don't know, it's 2:45 a.m. here in California. This is the only time Josh and I can get together to do it's not a podcast.
I've got 6 kids. It's not a podcast. Yeah, we're doing the not a podcast.
Is it a vodcast? Is that what the kids call it these days?
It could be a YouTube channel.
I like that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back to the package.json, and all we need to do here is change this to Jest. And then we can run npm jest. I have Firebase serving locally here.
npm test, right? Because the npm and then the word that is the key for the scripts object there on line 13, npm test. And Jest is the command line.
So some good news there, though. We do see that it's running picklecat.
Look at that.
We see that there's an error here. It's really nice and explicit.
So it says matcher does not accept any arguments.
So I shouldn't be passing true into to be truthy.
Right, because to be truthy false would automatically fail. So we expect our value to be truthy.
Look at that.
Hey, so we've got the simplest use case now.
We can call it a day. We've added tests.
That's right. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mr. J and Friends. So this is good. What I like about this is we have validated that the test framework is installed. The test framework is running. The test framework can see our files. The test framework can see our test. So that's a lot of assumptions that we know are true now before we've invested time in adding logic to our tests.
I'm curious if we just do another Firebase server, if it is going to break. And if it isn't, it may not even be worth right now reconfiguring Webpack and just keep going on testing.
Let's try it. Now, I've never used Firebase. I have a friend who has a friend who knows some of the guys that started it. And they travel a lot now after they sold it to Google, I heard. But do you want to explain what Firebase is or why you chose to use Firebase on this backend?
Definitely. Firebase was built by Google primarily for Android development as a packaged and branded subset of Google Cloud, built to quickly start projects on fire. So get you up and running as fast as you can with the hardest things to put on any project with this, which is authentication, DB storage, and authentication, object storage, and authentication for like files and pictures and stuff like that. So they packaged all this stuff together, made it really easy to get up and running. And quickly after they made it for Android, they exposed it for web as well. It has hosting built in, has a really nice CLI for local development, as we can see here.
Yeah, and Google or Firebase is welcome to sponsor our next episode.
Yeah, definitely. I keep reaching out with no return calls. So we'll see here in about 1 minute after this loads if it's actually working still. I didn't see any errors in the console. So we may not need to reconfigure Webpack at the moment, and it may be that Webpack and Jest are smart enough to know each other.
And just to be clear, your concern was that the Webpack configuration was going to compile or transpile the test files into your project?
And now that you state it so clearly, it makes sense why this would not be any issue, because I'm not including that file. And Webpack, its very first job is to traverse the tree of dependencies and package it together and I don't have that included in my actual running program.
Okay, and Webpack is explicit. It's not going to just grab everything.
Right.
Okay. I saw a phone.
Yeah, it's working.
Wonderful.
So we've got our testing abilities with us. We can go back to the code and start to identify the first method under test.
Yeah, so in testing, one term that you'll hear a lot is subject under test, and so that's the subject matter that you want to test, and it's often a method. Sometimes it's an object, and so we want to figure out what is the first thing we want to test, and we want to make sure that we can bring that into our test file. And that's usually the first step that I do, because if there's a problem there, I don't want to go too far. I like the TDD approach, where you take small incremental steps to accomplish your testing. It works out well, because if I write a lot of code and I do a lot of things and then something doesn't work, it takes me longer to figure out which piece broke it.
And what I've learned from you, Brian, is that because you've done that for over a year, a true TDD, you now start writing and can explore experiments like this in such a way that will be easy to test once you start testing. So you can quickly explore and then add tests once you get to a point where you realize, yeah, this is going to be a viable product going forward.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from doing TDD, prescriptive TDD, and I think I have a lot to say about it. We should probably do that on another episode.
And as you can see, I have not, and that is the reason why I have some functions here that are just kind of cobbled together in a way that makes it potentially a little bit harder to test. And that's one of my taglines now. I'm an eternal apprentice.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
It's always good to be a beginner at something, just like this not a podcast we're running here.
Yeah.
This is the very first time experience for me.
I'm learning about hernias recently. That wasn't the response I was.
It's hard for me to relate. I hope you find something else to learn about quickly after your hernia, and I hope everything goes well.
I've learned you can't use like Scotch tape.
Oh, duct tape is better.
Well, it could be. I haven't tried that yet.
Well, I'm glad you're getting it taken care of. I hear these things are usually trivial,
I hope so.
as long as it's not too bad.
I hear
So.
that as well.
And we'll give you an update next week.
You know, the hard thing is, just to make this more awkward, is I have a female doctor,
Okay.
and I actually, as I was wanting to make this appointment, I called insurance and said, hey, can I get a male doctor? They said, sure, but that'll start next month. And I was like, I'd really like to make sure this is a hernia and not something else, but she's a good doctor.
Yeah, I think the important thing is as long as you trust your doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This will get cut.
I love it.
Okay, so if you were to look at this, we basically have two things happening. We are authenticating, and we could, if we wanted to, try to put that under our subject lens and make sure that we are doing the right thing according to the contract of Firebase authentication. I'm not too worried about that part. It doesn't seem like the lowest hanging fruit for us.
Okay.
A couple of the things that it seems like we could do a better job at is testing what we do with the data as it comes back. So for instance, we have the potential of affecting multiple phones with one stream of data that's coming back.
Okay.
And so I need to start testing what I'm doing with that data, that huge object that's coming back. How I'm reducing it, how I'm treating it, and I'm going to be tweaking that soon for performance reasons. And
Can you show us in the file where that code is?
yeah, so it's inside the listener, This is a function that Firebase gives us on the database reference, so that on value change, we can get a snapshot of the whole object. So it's any value in that table, that NoSQL table. And we'll get back to the full snapshot, and we can pull out the users from that, loop through them, etc.
Okay, and this is a callback that's defined once and then given to Firebase, or I'm noticing on line 10 where it says init db listener. So where's the init part? Where is this function used right now?
Right now, I have it weirdly positioned right here after we load the initial phones that are already in the database onto the page.
Okay. Okay, so we load so we get the phones that are in the database,
Right.
and then we say init db listener, and init db listener really means, if you scroll back up, it really means connect to the database. No, it really means register a callback that says when we connect to the database, and the database, is it receiving the string value there, or where's the string value? Where does that come from?
Yeah, and this is one place where Firebase real-time databases act and feel much different than your standard SQL calls. It's a real-time socket connection to Firebase, and this is actually allowing us to listen to every single change in real, quote-unquote, real time. It's incredibly fast.
So value is a string that's going to be pushed down to the client from the socket?
On every change.
Okay. On every change.
Yep.
Okay, so what init db listener is doing then is it's registering a callback with Firebase that says the purpose of this callback, or where we're registering it, is on change of the data. Firebase is going to send us. Does it send us the payload of the data that changed, or does it all?
The full payload.
Oh, the whole thing. Okay, and that is on the event value.
Which is potentially good if there's multiple people. But if you've got 10 phones on the page and you're only getting one, that's one of the things I want to research, is if they allow just the change that was made instead of the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah. So and then all the logic is inside this callback, right? Let's take the anonymous function out, and let's make that our subject under test. What do you think about that idea?
I like that. So do you mean this whole function right here?
Yeah, it looks like it would be all the way from line 11, where function starts, down to 23.
Gotcha. Okay. And
So not quite the whole line there, just the anonymous function, just the callback, yes.
that's what I had before. Unfortunately, it goes to right here. So there's two anonymous functions.
Oh, I see.
But we can leave that second inline function there for now.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
make a callback here. And that would be called anything at this point. We'll change it in a second once we figure out what it's going to be.
Yeah, I like to call them listeners or handlers. Conceptually, I feel like this event happens and I'm going to handle it. Or this event happens and I'm kind of listening for this event. And I hear both in the software world.
This one's definitely handling what we've been listening to.
Okay. And it, what does it do again? What's the verb here?
Well, it was doing more than it should. And as I've heard you say in the past, if you ask a question what it does, and you hear something and something, or any
Sure.
joiners like that, then it's wrong. So it's doing too much. It was getting the data, parsing the data, and affecting the DOM.
Okay, but just high level, because you've got the code in your paste bin now. I can't read it. What do we want to do on value instead of what it does? What do you want it to do?
Yeah, so I want to simplify it and just return the data that we need so that we can pass it or give it to the next method which will do the work on the page.
Okay, and the work is going to be, let's call it on, this was value, let's call it on change.
Like,
On change handler. Does that sound accurate?
yeah,
We're listening for this change, and then we're going to handle the change.
right.
It's generic enough.
And for now, do you want to just do it on the same page?
Yeah,
Make it
totally.
easy?
Totally. Incremental. A lot of times I won't even go down. I'll just throw it right. And sometimes, I mean, you can throw it right in line, but
On change handler, on change handler. So it's not being called yet, but it actually is.
okay. So now, so we want to test this specifically, right? So now we have removed it from the initDB function. So we don't have to test anything about initDB yet. By assigning it to a variable or just pulling it out of there, we can test. We can now make this our subject under test. So
And that would be difficult at this point, given that it has no return. All it is quote unquote side effects on the DOM.
maybe, yeah. So let's see what's going on here. The first thing we're doing is we're taking the snapshot.
And just in case, Brian, I think there's a chance that you're much closer than I am.
Oh, to the
Go
microphone.
1 inch that way, and I'll go 1 inch this way.
There we go. Yeah, and I'm leaning in to see and everything. So the snapshot on change handler gets a snapshot, and a snapshot, I'm assuming, is a snapshot of the data at a current point in time.
Right.
So snapshot.val.users is going to get you the user orientations, and then it looks like you're looping through the user orientations, the key of which I'm gonna take a guess is a phone.
Yeah, each user, each phone.
Okay, and then we're applying the styles and transforming it.
And since those are inline and affected with JavaScript, I couldn't find out a different way than resetting these each time. I'm going to be optimizing that in the future. One thing right away I can see is that we could do some nice stream-oriented manipulation here instead of a for, but we'll get to that as well.
Okay.
This is one that I definitely wanted to break up. I wanted to get the data out and return it for another function to do the work, theoretically.
Okay. The first thing that jumps out at me is that a phone is a noun. So a phone is an object, and maybe we could have a phone object that's responsible for doing its own transformations. And then in the loop, we could initialize our phone object and then tell it to handle its own transformations.
I like it.
Which would allow us to make our phone object the subject under test, and we can then test variances of transformations on the phone object directly without having to deal with users, without having to deal with database, without anything. So we just isolate that one small piece.
I like it. Note that up here I have it called phone elements. So we could change that real quick just to phones.
Yeah, we could. One thing I would probably do is not change. I would probably just make a new one real quick. That way, I try not to make changes to behavior. How do I want to say this? I wouldn't want to break anything else by renaming phone elements right now, but this is your code base, you're more familiar with it, so I'm going to be more conservative on that.
No worries. Yeah, and it is smaller. I was going to do the command D trick of getting all of them, but
And let's make it just be one phone. Let's do one phone. And so a phone is a thing, it's a noun, and then it's gonna be responsible for some type of behavior, and that's gonna be what? transform, rotate.
Yeah.
How do you want to model this?
Yeah, rotate, set background photo. That's all at this point.
Okay. So let's make functions for rotate. Was our other function doing set background photo?
The set background photo was done at the very beginning. Well, actually, yeah, it was. Let's take a look down here.
Rotate.
Yeah, it didn't need to. So
let's just do rotate.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, that's one of the things I want to add is as another person gets onto the page, the new phone is created, which immediately sets the background photo. And from then on, the value changes just rotate it.
And would you mind bringing the terminal down a little bit and maybe even bringing your phone object down so I can see the function and the phone object at the same time?
Yeah, let's put it in line or close to it just so it's easy.
Yeah, that way we can kind of conceptually keep it all in our heads.
Okay. And we'll do rotate.
Great.
And that'll be something like this style.transform equals this or something.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But
so this phone is going to change its own styles. So I think we can just copy the code from line 50 in there.
Yeah, and we have to pass it one thing.
So we no longer need the key.
Right, it's just this at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, notice before it was...
I missed that what you just replaced for gamma there, sorry.
Notice before...
User orientations.
Oh, right.
So user orientations looks like it comes from the database users, and it is specific to... User orientations is all users. So it's going to be the gamma from that user.
Correct. And one thing to quickly note, this is where we start to see that I have mixed the phone data or the user data coming back from the database with this array of phone elements or object of phone elements on the DOM. And so this, we got to extract those apart, deal with just the phone objects first, probably.
Okay, let's how do I want to describe it? Let's inject only the data we need specifically into this function. So maybe instead of rotation, we can just inject gamma. Is that?
Yeah, and side note on that, I had it working with 2 of the 3 orientations. One of them is really difficult because it starts with where your phone was at the beginning. I forget which one that is. But it doesn't necessarily translate to a 2D screen.
Okay.
Anyway.
That's too much for me to think about right now.
But yeah, again.
Disclaimer, I'm not actually that smart.
How smart? You're not actually how smart?
Smart enough to fully grok that problem at this point.
Okay.
That's why I like TDD. It makes things simple and focused for me. So as somebody that's not that smart, it allows me to do programming fairly well.
I want to point out that we are passing in all of the users, which is really, in this case, modeled as phones. Unique phones. In the database, it would probably be more accurate to say these are phones compared to users.
Okay.
And we are getting all of that back on the change handler, but we're dealing with one phone here. So I just want to...
Yeah, so we need to initiate this phone in our loop, but before we do that, I want to get rid of the user orientations reference on line 46, which you had done, but you had done it with this.gamma, and I think rather than holding the state of gamma on the object, at least to begin with, let's just pass it in. So we've got gamma as a parameter on 42.
Right.
And now we can delete user orientation's key.
Right. So then we come back to line 43, and what are we actually transforming if this is our goal?
So it looks like if a phone object has a style property, then the phone object actually is a DOM representation.
Right. Which is what we're trying to split apart, right?
Yeah. Sounds like a web component. Ooh.
Thought about that.
So is there a way that we can? What was it before? It was already an element?
Yeah, I had initiated it up here.
Okay. How did you instantiate a phone previously? Where is that?
So on add phones to page, I had created the divs, added the class of phone, set the attribute ID, set the ID to be that unique phone,
Okay.
and started appending those to the body.
New div.
Yeah. So they're divs with the ID equaling that unique phone from the database. That way, they're there, and all we're manipulating is the existing one's styles. But again, that doesn't work well for future goals, etc.
That's okay. It's been a while since I've done this, but I think with JavaScript's prototypical inheritance, we could take our phone object and define a prototype and attach that prototype to the element. I don't know if you want to do that right now. I'm thinking. So it's all about initializing the object at this point. And you already had them initialize and add phones to page. So this is where some of that coupling comes in, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So we need to make some decisions.
And in a pair programming situation, normally, you would come in a lot of times knowing the code, understanding where we were. And right now, I'm kind of half driving because I understand the code, and you're kind of half driving. But yeah, let's challenge me. Use your superpower and ask some good questions, and
Well, how do we want to? Let me ask this. Is a phone in our application here, do you want the phone to be an object that contains an element, or do you want the phone to be an object that is an element?
Ultimately, I do want it to be an element for now, but I want theoretically what's coming back from the database to just be data that we later use on the elements.
Yeah, I mean, what's coming back from the database, I don't think you can get an element from the database.
Right,
so we've got the data from the database, and now we need to initialize or instantiate our element. So let's just go, let's not think too much, let's just go iteratively, and just on 54, just copy that div code in there to create a new div from up above. And we're just gonna explore a little bit here. And perfect. And it's not gonna, this isn't gonna be the final solution, but we're gonna take care of the very first thing we need to do, which is create that element, add those classes. Now that that block of code is in there and I can see it all, let's comment out 57 and 58 because those are two concerns that we don't want to address at this point. And then let's take 54 through 56 and let's create a new method, or a new function rather. I do Java at the day job right now. And that new function is going to be responsible for creating a phone element. So create phone, perfect. And we want that one to return that element.
I like it.
Now drop that in. Perfect. And let's call it you know, now we have to make another decision. Do we want to just create the div there, or do we want to return the div from create phone, or do we want to return our new phone object? I'm feeling like we want to probably the easiest thing now, and not in game, but the easiest thing now is to return our new phone object that contains that div. So let's just try it. Let's see how it feels.
Okay.
Let's write it. Sometimes what I like to do is write code and see how it feels, and if it feels good, I'll go with it, and if it doesn't, I won't.
I like it.
Okay, so
And
let's.
just a quick note on time. So we've time boxed this time at 2:30 a.m. on Fridays, or I forget what day it is,
Yeah.
to be just an hour, so that we can still get some sleep, still make our hernia appointments, and we've got another 9 minutes or so. So we're gonna wrap up soon. We're gonna time box this, maybe go for another 4 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. Review what we've done, and encourage everyone to subscribe, etc.
Let's get some code written then.
Right.
All right, so make a new phone in there, maybe after line 60. Somewhere we want to get our phone object from up above.
You mean from this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We want a new one of those guys.
New phone.
Yeah, and phone actually could be a function. Probably 41. We probably want to make it a function, or a function that returns a new instance of a phone.
I like it. Describe what you mean by that.
So let's go. Do
you mean something like that?
Yeah, let's try that. And then have it return. So on 42, return that literal.
Right.
You can get rid of the bracket after return and put rotate on the. No, you can't. Sorry. You need that. And you need another one.
Sorry, I'm just getting this. Rotate is a property
Yep.
of the object.
We need an end. There you go.
Gotcha. We're returning this object, which has a method property.
Right. So every time we invoke phone, we'll get a new object literal that has rotate on it. And let's have phone on 41. Let's have that accept an argument that is an element, an HTML element. We'll call it element. And then on the object literal, let's make a key called element and assign it element. Perfect. So now our phone object has rotate function and the element. And on 44, where it says this.style.transform, we actually want to transform our element. So that brings us full circle to that dependency on style that we didn't have. Now we've got an actual element to apply that to. Jumping down to 64, new phone is going to equal phone, and we're going to pass it in our new div. Which means we'll probably need to move that down to, we can move that to the return line actually. So we can just return phone with an argument of the new div passed into it. Perfect. So we started with the change handler, and then we said, okay, we need a phone that's got some behavior, and then we realized, oh well, the behavior is going to act on this element. So on change handler has a dependency on phones, and phones have dependencies on their representation in the document, which is the element. So you can see we're breaking apart the dependencies into their own functions that can be tested individually.
I like it.
And this is good because we can compose them later as well. Let's go. Now that we've got a create phone, I think the first thing I want to do, it's a lower level dependency, is we should really test that first.
Okay. Got 5 minutes left. Do you want to?
Let's do it real fast.
Okay.
Jump to your test.
So
We're gonna do this.
everything's set up okay. Picklecat.js is our current test.
Perfect.
We need to include the create phone function from index up here. And this is where I'm still getting some practice on ES6 module imports.
Okay. This is probably what we should have done before we changed any code.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
But isn't it import? Well, first we also need to export, don't we? We need a way to be able to export this whole thing. And that's why we might want to put this into its own module.
Yeah, I think we can export it from index as well. If you cut and paste it outside of your callback here, you should be able to.
And specifically create phone.
Yep. There you go. And then after that, export create phone.
Statement expected.
Are we doing TypeScript?
No. Not sure why it says TS there. That should have. Sorry, I had a page up about ES6 imports and exports. I was studying up on that a little bit more this morning.
I think we're gonna need it because I haven't done this in a while.
And that just goes to show that my code wasn't set up really well to be able to do that. So I have it right here, yeah, JavaScript modules. So I'm borrowing from Airbnb's JavaScript style guide, and we see I'm on the wrong part of the page. They have a whole section on exports that we recently borrowed to set up what it looks like at
Module.
Williams Sonoma. Yes. That's bad. That's not ES6.
Okay, best import from
This is
export
good.
default.
We might need export default. But I don't think that will.
I don't think so.
Ah, look at
Wow. Okay. Magic.
For now,
And can we go and import that?
we need.
It's going to be the name of what we just exported.
Right.
Create phone.
From, right?
Yep.
Looks just like that.
It's going to be a string.
Is it like that?
Mm-hmm. And no JS, I believe. I think that's
Right.
assumed. And let's now we have subject under test, so let's call create phone in our test after line 3. Let's assign it to a variable.
What would we pass? Do we need to pass anything to it? I forget.
We can check, but let's assign it to a variable first. Phone. No syntax errors, so it looks good. And let's expect phone dot element. Can we expect it to be a div? Does Jest have DOM assertions?
No, I don't think so. Out of the box.
Then let's do phone.element.get attribute ID, and let's make an assertion on the ID of the element. What we're really going for here is making sure that we can load our subject under test and that we can make an assertion on it. This won't be our final test code.
Does that look right? And the ID.
I think it's a lowercase d, no?
Oh, you
I
might
could be wrong.
You might
get attribute by ID. If you load it in your browser, you can
definitely.
You can test that syntax really quick.
Sorry.
It's okay, Josh. Just don't let it happen again.
My console is all covered up. Hold on. It's gonna be way too much editing for this video.
Yeah, it's okay. It's our first time.
Let's do.
Get attribute though. We want attribute.
Well, yeah, I have to get the element first.
Oh, sure.
Which is, where is it? Right here.
There you go.
No, it's just attribute.
Get that first.
Yeah.
It's dollars and a zero or something, right?
You could use that, yeah.
If you assign it, it will give you the autocomplete. There you go. Get attribute, string ID.
Sorry. Oh.
The first parameter is going to be a string. It's going to be the attribute name, and then the second. Yeah. There you go.
So let's get attribute by ID. So that does mean, don't we need to figure out?
Let's go back to create phone. What ID did we give it? We gave it key, right?
Right.
And we don't have key in create phone. So
We
let's
don't.
add key to create phone. Key is a dependency. And the nice thing here is because we're not tied to the database now in our test, we can give it whatever key we want in our test setup. So let's go back. And so we're going to create a phone with a key. I'm feeling Pickle Cat. I'm feeling that. And we expect the ID of the element inside our phone to be Pickle Cat.
Okay.
And let's run this test and
Failed because create phone, unexpected identifier,
it's our import.
right here.
Yeah, so again, what we could have done is we could have imported it and ran our assert true as true.
Just to make sure this is working.
Yeah.
Good point.
That's okay though. So tests, so we're up one directory, we've got index, JS, import create phone.
Okay, so here is where Webpack and Jest need to start playing nicely together. We need to tell Webpack, we need to tell Jest to run Webpack to transpile ES6 code.
Okay.
So that Jest can run.
Since we're running out of time, let's go back to index. Let's just get a green test. Let's do that. And let's copy that code there for create phone.
Okay. I like it.
Keep it in this file, but make a copy of it. Put it in here, and we're gonna need our phone too. Our phone function. There it is, line 41. So we're just gonna pretend, we're gonna cheat and pretend that our import was working. There we go. There you go. So we know our logic is right, and we know that it's just our import that wasn't working. So we got some progress there.
Fantastic. So
Now let's, before we get too excited, one last really fast thing. Change the key in the assertion from pickle cat to be like pickle cat 1.
just to make sure.
And we should see it. No, with just
Oh,
one side. We
I
want to
see
see a
it.
failure.
See it.
We want to make sure that our test isn't lying to us. There you go.
Fantastic. We struggled through, and part of that is we saw how my initial setup, without thinking of tests, created a situation where we had to piecemeal apart section by section and get our minds wrapped around the model. I had some poor naming in there as well, but we're getting to a place now where we've got some clean functions, some real functions, and I like your object setup that makes a logical phone object relationship that references its element on the page. Like that a lot. We'll go forward with that. If you like this style of working through problems where you're seeing real world instead of pre-scripted, pre-planned programming, and you're seeing all the inefficiencies and poor programming that a veteran developer can do in an exploration phase, then subscribe. If you enjoy PickleCat, or if you also have a hernia, give us a thumbs up on the video as well.
Give us a thumbs up if you do Thai boxing also.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Give us a comment if you have any other boxing experience on the video. Thank you for coming. You can do this. Happy testing.
In closing, I'll say your naming was fine. It's a natural thing for programming and applications to evolve and the domain model to evolve. And that's what we're seeing here. That's just how it goes. Software's never done. And other than that, in closing, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming over
Yeah.
at 2:30 a.m. It's pretty early.
Oh, go back to
You
bed.
see, we're in Alaska. There's a lot of light coming in, even though it's late at night. Just kidding. Thanks.
Bye, guys. Okay, are you gonna do the first introduction?
No, you're
you got
first.
like show name or anything going on here? Like,
I don't know.
I feel like I thought you were gonna do the, hey, this is the
Well,
what'd you call it?
that would be. I do have Mr. J,
Yeah, welcome to Mr. J.
but that might be like the official pre-recorded thing that goes here, and then we just kick off with intros.
Okay, you want to give it a dry run?
I'll figure that out later. No, I don't know what it will be.
Welcome to Mr. J, the place where you drink coffee and learn programming.
Welcome.
Okay. So you just want me to jump right in?
Yeah, you're first.
Okay, let's do this. So my name is Brian. I don't like that. See, I went to the Toastmasters recently, and I learned that so is also another word I could do without in my communication.
We could edit in some sort of noise every time we say so.
Wait, let's.
It's okay.
So where do I want to look? Right here?
Right here.
Do we want to look into the camera? And for those of you that don't know the accelerometer, what an accelerometer is, you're not alone. All I really know, Josh, is that it measures. Well, I guess I don't know much.
Alpha, beta, and gamma.
Those are the terms.
Yeah.
But it measures where your phone is in space.
Oh, and
correct?
actually, I don't think it is actually the accelerometer. It's the gyroscope.
Gyroscope. That makes more sense. I remember having a gyroscope when I was a kid. The kind you would spin, and the centrifugal force would
Like a chicken.
make it spin
a
interesting
chicken head.
ways. Like a chicken head. Yes.
So you're gonna have to sign.
I like the chicken head
This is why
video.
you didn't try it before, because you don't like to sign in on web apps. But just know all I'm grabbing.
Josh is going to take all my information.
All I'm grabbing is your profile photo.
At least it's Google sign in and not Facebook.
So if I refresh the page here, which is one of the things I want to work on, I don't want to have to refresh. Wait for it.
Oh no, it's my really old Google photo. That's okay.